for myself and for my children.
Again, that was our Alex Wagner there. Adrian, let me start with you. And let's start with President Obama's declaration that he is going to essentially go it alone. He's going to act unilaterally since Congress will not act. What can the president do, and how much of an impact can he have by himself without congressional approval?
He actually asked the Homeland Security Chief, Jay Johnson, to evaluate what they could do to make policies more humane on enforcement priorities. What that would mean, they could change who is a priority for if they're a reentry into the country. You know, is it 3 years that they would be looking at people to remove in the last 3 years, or in the last few weeks? So there's different things they can do. They can give work permits. You know, when he was looking at the DHS reforms, that's a memo that would happen. What activists have been hammering him on this year is asking for a larger reform, something to do with like what he did with the deferred action for childhood arrivals for undocumented youth, the so-called dreamers who were brought to this country as children. So what people are saying, can we define a new group that would be like the dreamers, possibly the children, the parents of U.S. citizens?
What of the argument, though, that the deferred action program is part of what's created this crisis at the border now?
Yeah, certainly. When you talk to House Republicans, and they talk from the beginning, from Eric Cantor, his loss, to now what's going on at the border with the unaccompanied minors, this has allowed people who didn't want to deal with reform to say, to use a narrative to say, this is a lawless president. His policies have put us in this position.
Juanita, this is how Democratic Congressman Luis Gutierrez, this is how he reacted on Morning Joe.
There are many things the president can do, and I expect this. Just as Republicans have said no, 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 I expect the president to be broad, expansive, and generous in the use of his prosecutorial discretion.
Juanita, you're there in Arizona, a state literally on the front lines of this thing. State also dealing with this recent surge of immigrant children crossing the border alone. What do you think needs to be done, and what would you tell President Obama, or Congress for that matter?
Well, I think that right now what we're seeing is a cyclical influx of migrants, which is something that we've seen every 10 years since the 80s. The reality is that the civil unrest in Central America, along with the economic issues, have exacerbated this issue. And, of course, we're seeing more people here. And I think the most important thing, especially in regards to the children, is to reframe this. Look at this as a humanitarian crisis, a refugee crisis, as opposed to a detention crisis. Because these people do not pose any risk to our national security.
It sounds to me, Juanita, like you're saying that we should not be deporting these children.
We definitely need to spend time with these children, evaluating their situation, and make sure that we're not deporting children back to the countries where they may be killed, where they may be hurt. People are risking their lives. It's an incredible thing to be here on the border and to see so many mothers and children and to have the opportunity to talk to them and hear about their harrowing journey, because they believe that this place, that the United States, is a beacon of peace and justice, and that their hope is that their dangerous situations will be acknowledged by this country and that they will be able to seek safety here.
Adrian, seeing the images like the ones that we've been seeing at the border, hearing the stories like the ones that we heard in Alex Wagner's piece, what do those pictures, what do those interviews, what, if anything, do they do to the immigration conversation in this country?
Yeah, you know, I think that it's clear that Republicans have been, you know, with seeing what just happened, they do not like where the narrative has gone, and they don't like what the president's policies have done. What it does to the immigration debate, you know, yesterday I was on a call, and a lot of the people who are working, like Juanita, who are working at the border, say that this is a refugee crisis. You know, that there was a record number of murders of children in Honduras. So they say when you see mothers coming with their children, that is a sign of a refugee crisis, that this doesn't have to do with immigration reform.
A refugee crisis versus a humanitarian crisis. Adrian, what does that mean then for the debate moving forward? If we treat it like it's a refugee crisis versus a political crisis, what then?
I mean, Obama's asking for $2 billion from Congress. He's trying to deal with these two issues separately. It's very dicey politically. He's trying to say we have to deal with these children. A lot of the activists are saying you have to give due process. You have to allow them to talk about these are children. So now they have to have a couple days to deal with lawyers to say, you know, that I'm actually in danger in my country.
That $2 billion, by the way, more immigration judges. He wants to open more detention facilities. He wants to be able to speed up deportations for a lot of the kids there. The Associated Press points out that many immigration reform advocates have reacted, quote, harshly, Juanita, to President Obama's plan, accusing his administration of being unnecessarily aggressive with regards to these deportations. Juanita, one of the things that continues to strike me is how you have so many people who have claimed that President Obama is lawless when it comes to immigration and enforcing immigration laws. But here you have an administration that has deported more kids, more adults than any administration previously. How do you reconcile the two of those things?
I think it's very difficult to reconcile both concepts in this political climate because, unfortunately, I think that people are using the opportunity of the children to twist in their political agenda when really they, from a practical logistical perspective, they are two separate issues. When we look at immigration reform and we look at adults who are here in the United States who need a different lawful status in order to come out of the shadows versus the very practical, emotional, and physical crisis of these children that are coming across the border from Central America. They are two separate issues and should be treated as such.
Border has apprehended more than 52,000 immigrant children crossing the border so far. We expect that number to rise, Juanita. For folks who are not familiar with the process, what happens to these children once they make it? How long do they stay here, and are they all just sent back to their home countries?
You know, it really depends on what's going on, because right now we're seeing such a large influx that our federal structures are unable to process people as quickly as they usually would. Usually children in detention would only be in like a national placement center for 48 to 72 hours. But because there's such a huge backlog within other parts of the government, we're seeing some children have to stay there up to 2 weeks. And that's a huge strain on the services, but at the same time, I see many people rising to the challenge, trying to address the needs of those children.
Juanita Molina, Adrian Carrasquillo, an important conversation. That's why we spent so much time on it today. Thank you both for being here. I do appreciate your insight and your perspective. And by the way, you can see more